so the fix for your swing, what we talked about was, again, when I drew that line on the computer in your backswing, you made a nice turn to get started, and then once the arms got to about here, the right hip starts to push this way, and so now the hips have slid that direction, and when the hips get in that position, you can't get the arms in anymore. The arms only can go up. So you got lots of lift, and now you end up in a position where you're almost sort of like a half moon kind of position where the hips have gone this way. You stay pretty centered with your upper body, and this arm lift puts you in this position here, where now you just got problems to get to the ball to where you can hit the ball hard from the inside. And so what happens is you make a nice backswing to right here, and because the hips have slid towards the target, or towards the camera and away from the target, you get to slide away. You're in a good spot here, but now it's really difficult to get the hands to go this way. It doesn't feel very natural. So because you're kind of blocked in by this hip, you start to just lift the club up into this really upright position. So the hands work nicely in and straight up, and now with the hip this way, to get to the point where you want to be, where you want to have some nice hip drive into this position here, that is such an extreme move. It's really difficult to do, especially because you've gotten the weight onto the outside of your foot. It's difficult to get outside the foot and then get the body to go that way. It'd be the equivalent of throwing a pitch off the backside of the rubber. You'd want your foot inside the rubber to push towards the target, but instead you've got your foot sort of rolled this way, hips are this way, you're in kind of this half moon position here, and then what happens is the left hip pulls away. There's no drive this way. The left hip pulls away, and that pulling away brings the arms out and over. So again, you've gone from this hips out, weights on the outside of the foot, arms are up high, and now when I pull my hips over, when that left hip clears instead of slides, when it clears, the arms go over, and now I'm really steep. Now I'm in a position where this shaft is almost completely vertical. And so now I have to lean this way, sort of what you do, and that you've got this position here, hips pull away, shaft is really steep, and now the head drops this way to get the shaft to lay down at the last minute to where you can flip it into impact. So what I'd like to see you do is, realistically, from this position, the feeling is that the right hip goes back behind you, and not directly back, it almost goes on sort of it feels like the right hip is going 45 degrees behind you. It may also feel like the hips turn, it'll feel maybe this way. It'll feel like the hips actually turn sort of back, like if there was a bar stool right here, that you're trying to put both cheeks onto that bar stool instead of knocking the stool over that was right here. So the hip's going to go back, it's going to stay inside the line, and then from there we want to work on a little push this way, and then you won't have the need to do this move because you'll be inside the line, a little bit of a push with the hips, and then you go ahead and hit it hard. And what will happen is you'll see your swing plane will change a lot because the hands will go in, and if I allow this hip to continue to turn instead of slide, if I allow it to turn, the arms will continue inward on a much more neutral kind of swing path. And then with that hip slide, the club will fall down onto a much shallower angle as opposed to all the way right here. So the swing thought realistically is right hip deep, right hip back, right hip turning behind me, and it's just right hip back, left hip forward, and then go ahead and hit it hard with everything. Hopefully that helps take some of the steepness, and what it will do is you'll see that the low point of your swing will be controlled, because when your upper center and your lower center get stuck back here especially, and you can't get to that front pivot, get the centers on the ball or ahead of them, you'll bottom out behind the ball a lot, especially with sort of your mid and short irons. You'll notice that when I was watching you take practice swings, you would step up to the ball and take a practice swing next to the ball,
and every time you would take a divot 2-3 inches behind the ball. So you're gonna have to make a serious compensation over the ball to pull inward or really lean back to try to keep the angle a little longer to hit the ball first. So what you'll see if you focus on right hip deep, left hip forward, you'll see that the low point position is much more consistent, striking the ground slightly ahead of the ball. So hopefully that helps. Right hip back, left hip forward, and go ahead and hit it. And that should be a pretty easy way to get more of the inside of the ball, shallow it out easier, and you'll feel it much easier to get through the shot and not have this head hanging back, hands flipping forward kind of look through the ball. All right, hope it helps.